Welcome to another Rock the Prototype podcast episode. IT security and digital transformation via cloud technologies and containerization require radical realignment of previous IT strategies. In today's podcast episode, we'll focus on IT security and have an expert as a guest who makes an indispensable contribution to one of Europe's largest e-commerce companies with its IT security measures. Be curious what you can expect in the following minutes. This Rock the Prototype podcast episode is packed with valuable insights for you. Here's what you can expect in this podcast episode. In addition to the value proposition of IT security for any organization, you will learn what tasks and measures IT security experts contribute. We'll highlight the different roles and functions of IT security specialists and give you valuable insights into effective IT security measures. Today, we will focus on IT security in software development. We will learn more about important roles and activities for secure software development. Who is better qualified in explaining this important topic than someone who's an expert in this field? We have Vladyslav Cherednychenko, Head of IT Security Engineering at About You, on the topic of IT security in our today's podcast interview. Vladyslav, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. So, as Sasha already mentioned, I'm Vladyslav, and originally I am coming from Ukraine. I started my career there in IT when I was studying for my bachelor's degree in data protection and security. But in fact, my first job was not in security, but in DevOps. So I worked for around 1.5 years as a DevOps engineer. And then I quit and went to do my master's in cybersecurity. So that's how I later on got my job at About You. And I've been there more than 5 years now. I started as a security engineer and made my way to the head of information security engineering.
Some of our listeners might not be familiar with About You. Could you please give us a short introduction to About You?
About You is one of the biggest online fashion e-commerce platforms that we have in Europe. It's a very fast-growing startup. We have, in fact, two business models. One is About You Retail. You can go to aboutyou.de or other domains, and buy fashion items there online. And the other business model is called Scale. And this is our software as a service business where we sell our expertise in e-commerce and our technology to other e-commerce businesses to help them streamline their e-commerce business. Because as About You was developing and growing as a company, we have seen that we have quite a good experience in e-commerce and running infrastructure without going down and handling high load. So we decided to make it into a business. Yeah. So now we have already several customers who are using our backend to run their e-commerce stores.
Great. For our listeners, I think we should reflect the role of IT security in software development. Vladyslav, why is secure software development essential in today's software projects? What's your focus on the importance and necessity of IT security in today's software landscape at About You?
Yeah, so I think I will not say anything new to the listener if I mentioned that it is important to secure your software. I'm pretty sure that everyone is already aware that security is definitely part of running a business, especially an online business. And if someone's not aware of it, then I guess that this podcast is a very good place to start to change their mind. But why is that a thing? I think if you follow the trend in cybersecurity in the past few years, not just a few, but even maybe 10 or even 15, you're going to notice that, first of all, the number of cyber attacks is growing, specifically, let's say, ransomware, as an example. It's on the rise. Every year, I'm reading reports about cyber attacks, and ransomware hits the new record in the number of companies that got infected and the amount of ransom that was paid to the companies. So it's going up and up and up. This is why you need to think about cybersecurity when you're running a business, because it can cost you millions due to an attack. And another aspect is that we are starting to see more regulation from the government. And everyone is aware of GDPR, for example, but there are some others as well. We see also a lot of demand from the clients in the B2B setup that they want to see whether About You is secure. Yeah, they are asking us for our security principles, for our security policies, for any certifications that we might have to prove that we are safe to do business with. And at About You, it has been a focus for many years now. I think since almost the beginning of the company, our top management saw that cybersecurity is important and started investing into it. They built up a team, and I think it has been there for a few years before I joined. So the company is now 10 years old, and I think the cybersecurity team started a few years after the company was founded.
For sure. The risk of being hit by an attack resulting in a loss of data is worth more than just considering IT security, but a duty to take IT security very seriously.
Yeah, of course.
And cybersecurity protection is an ongoing challenge against an ongoing trend of intrusion attacks. How do you handle this at a scale at About You?
When you deal with such volume of data and so many customers like About You does, I think economically it costs less to run a team of 10 people in cybersecurity for 5 years than to suffer from one attack.
Pretty sure. And it's always very relevant for the trust customers have towards an organization, their business partners, and platforms they are using.
Yeah.
So please introduce us to the integration of security aspects in the development process and tasks and responsibilities of the IT security teams at About You.
Yeah. So the company generally has more than 300 developers by now and multiple teams. I think more than 20 teams that work in software development. And we have a centralized security team. So we have just one team that works on IT security.
Okay.
And we currently have around 10 people, and we still want to grow and have around 13, 14 employees working on IT security in a few months.
Nice.
And at About You, there is this concept of units and circles. So this is just how we structure our departments. And one unit can contain multiple circles. So, for example, IT security is a unit at About You, and it's divided into 4 circles. And one circle is application security. They are focusing on things like internal penetration testing. They are doing code reviews. They advise and help the teams how to develop better and more secure code. Then the second circle is DevSecOps. They help integrate security into the development processes. So they are more like, they are not testing the applications, but they integrate tools that help keep the applications secure and our infrastructure secure as well. Then the third circle is called GRC. It stands for Governance, Risk and Compliance. This circle is responsible for all the compliance requirements that we have from our external auditors. Since About You is a public company, we get audited a lot. So several times a year, and we have seen the need to grow this. This circle also shows to our B2B clients that we are secure. So we get requests like, for example, please describe how you do XYZ. And this is where this department kicks in.
I see.
And then the last circle, but not least, is incident response. Basically, here we monitor our infrastructure for threats, for unusual or malicious activities, and then we respond to incidents if something is not a false positive and it is actually an attack. So that's how we are structured.
Interesting. And how are these circles organized? Are the team members constant part of these circles, or are the team members giving support when needed and they offer their specialized expertise whenever it's needed?
Yeah, so there are generally a few people in each circle, apart from incident response. This is the smallest one, and it's just one person for now, but we want to grow it. It's just I would say the most recent one. And there are some shared responsibilities in the team, like incident response, because this is something that we believe everyone needs to know how to do, because we cannot expect just one person being available all the time and knowing everything. So we train the whole team in incident response. But in all other aspects, they are subject matter experts in their own field. Yeah, so either application security, DevSecOps, or GRC. So this is how we do it. And then, of course, there are some projects that the whole team is working on. There are activities that the whole team participates in. But mostly, I would say maybe 70% of the time, the circles, they work independently on their own projects. But of course, they are aligned on the same goal. This is how we try to do it.
Cool. And how do these teams cooperate, or what would you say is the path to success?
It depends. What do you mean with cooperation?
In your organization, you have implemented an organizational model of units and circles.
Yes.
How do you organize cross-functional topics? How do you handle your information flow? Especially when topics lap each other, it is very important to organize an effective information flow, or whenever cross-functional knowledge is of importance. This is, from my experience, often a real challenge to raise knowledge or to keep other teams in the line of accurate information, and of course to enable others. For example, sharing best practices implementing IT security. It could be very interesting if you share with us how you handle this information flow and how you effectively support teams.
Yeah, so we spend quite a bit of time to make everyone aware what is going on in each circle. So every week we would have knowledge sharing sessions, we have incident response exercises, and once in 3 months we have meetings to discuss what are our goals for the next 3 months, what we have achieved, and in this way we align on things. And when there is a specific task that requires cross-functional expertise, then they just work together. I don't know. So we work together on a daily basis. So for example, we have a stand-up meeting where everyone participates from the team. So it's not per circle. So more or less everyone knows what is going on. And whenever somebody needs help, they just work together.
Sure.
Is this sufficient? I don't know to what level of detail I can make it.
Sure. Sometimes it depends from tool support, organizing knowledge. Sometimes it's more easy when teams are closely together. Then such tool supports are not so important. It's difficult to understand when not knowing your regular routine. So but I got a clear vision how you organize it. So let's focus on threats and risks in software development. Of course, IT security is essential for About You as an e-commerce company, as you already said. But could you give us some insights into the threat landscape and special challenges for About You, or maybe an e-commerce company in general?
Yeah, so I think the common risk for every e-commerce is web attacks. So web-based attacks on their websites, however you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So there are several, but I think the most, let's say, annoying one that we're dealing with are the bots. So what do I call a bot? There are several different kinds. For example, someone wants to find the best price for a jacket on our website. So they write an automated tool that goes over our website and collects prices. This is called web scraping or price scraping, product scraping, several names. This is one kind. Then there is another kind which buys sneakers. And this is the most challenging one and the smartest one, I would say. So we have exclusive sneakers sold on our website and they are released from time to time. The release calendar is open to the public. We also want to let our customers know when these exclusive sneakers are released. So these bots also, they watch this calendar, and then the bot operators, they write quite sophisticated software to be the first ones to buy this exclusive sneaker and then resell it. So we've been dealing with this for a few years now. But yeah, this is how it happens.
Understood. That's very interesting. And what are the challenges in threat detection and mitigation?
So the main challenge is that some bots, they are smart and they will mimic a real customer. So they try to behave as closely to a real customer as possible. So it's very hard to detect them. And we as an IT security team, we want to basically fingerprint the attacker and block only the attacker and not any other real customer. So we basically keep our website alive. All our services are running so that real people can keep buying items from our website, but the bots or the attackers, they cannot.
Great.
And this is the challenge. When the bots start looking very similar to humans, then it pushes us to develop better tooling to detect them. And finding this balance between hindering the shopping process and blocking the bots. Because of course we can just block everything, but then nobody can buy anything on our website.
Of course.
And at the same time, we can introduce annoying steps in the shopping process that will discourage people from buying on our website. Like, I don't know, too many captchas, for example, or like challenges, or the website is loading too long. And finding this balance is quite tricky.
Of course. Sounds like an agile and ongoing battle.
Of course. Never ending.
In the ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity, maintaining complete visibility into an organized, complex infrastructure can prove to be a real challenge. It involves gaining a holistic understanding of entire networks, systems, components, and applications. Such visibility empowers not only IT security teams to promptly detect and respond to potential threats and preventing data breaches and ensuring a robust security posture. Do you have any advice for tactics working well in improving this infrastructure visibility?
Yeah, so since you mentioned infrastructure visibility, it's one of the challenges that I think most companies have, basically knowing what is running in your infrastructure. And it is a difficult thing. And the advice I could give is not relying on a single tool and trying multiple tactics. Like, for example, approach your visibility from the defender's perspective as well as from the attacker's perspective. So have multiple tools at hand to try to find and discover what is running in your infrastructure and make it a continuous process. So not do it like, let's say, once in 3 months, but do it continuously. So automation is a key, and having multiple tooling and different tactics to discover your infrastructure.
For sure. I also believe that automation in deployment raises software quality and IT security at the same time.
Yeah.
And how should organizations address the challenge of enabling standards for IT security across their teams? And what strategies could be implemented to achieve better risk mitigation in this aspect?
Generally, it is a very complex topic because when you want to grow fast and you want to allow everyone to do, let's say, to have some freedom in development, because this is where your company grows the fastest without any restrictions, without everyone having to read a ton of documentation before starting something. So I would say the best tactic is to have something that is called security by default. This is where you create templates for your teams to get started. So for example, I don't know, you want to create a database. Yeah. And instead of that engineer having to create a database from scratch, they can just use a template that is provided either by your security team or your operations team. Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing I can suggest is to scan continuously for something that is not compliant. So what we have at About You, we have a definition of what is a secure resource. And then we scan our infrastructure. And if something is not according to the standard, then we go to that team and we ask them to fix it. And of course, the infrastructure as a code is probably the one of the most essential steps, because manual changes are an enemy of security, I would say, especially when people have a lot of access, a lot of permissions, and they are allowed to change infrastructure on the go. This is something that you will have a lot of trouble dealing with. So yeah, make all your infrastructure as a code. And you will sleep better at night knowing that nobody is changing something manually.
Maybe we can say testing the unexpected, which I mean cross-thinking and doing testing above the borders and being creative in thinking of cybersecurity threats.
What do you mean with that?
Yeah, always thinking from the perspective of an attacker and playing the game of blue and red teams with the goal making the components more secure than they have been before.
Yeah, definitely. So but what I'm talking about is more for a company in general. Yeah, what you're talking about is more or less how to structure your IT security team. So red teaming, blue teaming, it's mostly done on the IT security team level rather than on the company level. So, but these are also very important, of course. So we also do it. We started doing it some time ago. Basically, we split the team into two, and one team is attacking, another team is responding. So basically, this is how we also test whether our measures to detect something are working or not.
And Vladyslav, could you explain us some best practices and processes for ensuring IT security?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one I can come up with is to invest into people as your human firewall. What I mean with that is that I think you heard, and it's common to say that the weakest link in cybersecurity is a human, but I think it's also the strongest link. And the difference is whether you train people within your organization to be the strongest link or not. Because if you don't, they will be the weakest link. And if you do, then I think humans will outperform any firewall, any technical solution you can implement in your company. Because what we have seen is that it is very difficult and very expensive to scale your security together with the company. So if your company grows fast, there is pretty much no chance that you will be able to scale your security fast enough at the same time if you don't invest into people's knowledge. And because if you, let's say, you can hire 20 developers, 20 engineers who will grow your technology, and at the same time you can maybe hire 1 or 2 security engineers, and this is absolutely disproportionate. And instead you should allocate part of your resources or part of your security budget into training those engineers to be security minded, because they can cover a lot of security requirements, a lot of risk mitigation on their own, because a lot of engineers are smart and capable. I don't think that everyone needs to be a security engineer, or every company even needs a security engineer. Sometimes you just need a few security people who will do stuff that is, like, for example, thinking like the attacker or performing certain attacks that really do take time to master, but but developers can do the defensive parts very well. Not, let's say, active detection, but implementing secure code, verifying that your colleague's code is good, looking into the infrastructure,
Definitely.
Separating access and so on. So this is probably the biggest advice I can give. And the second advice I can give is to establish a working process to fix vulnerabilities, because what we had for a while at About You was a process to find vulnerabilities, but not to commit to fixing them. And then we changed the focus, and we have established a process where we actually commit to fixing something. And then we have seen that in a very short time, I would say, and short is like half a year to 8 months, we have seen a very significant reduction in the number of vulnerabilities. And now we keep them at a stable level. So we find a certain amount and we fix a certain amount per month. And this is a good balance, because otherwise you have a disbalance and your number of vulnerabilities is just growing. And it's not enough to just find vulnerabilities. You also have to fix them.
I understand. So is this related to the definition of done?
Yes, I would say so. So it's just the life cycle of a vulnerability. And when it comes to IT security, basically you have one team, which is the IT security team, that is responsible to find your vulnerability, and then the development team that is responsible to fix it. When there is a misalignment on priorities or a very packed backlog for that team, then a vulnerability might just get lost. Or, the ticket is it's somewhere out there in the backlog with no SLA to fix it, with no commitment to that SLA, and so on. And it can just be there, and that's it. So it is very important to just, to reach the end of the life cycle for a vulnerability.
For sure. And how do you organize your secure coding guidelines and code reviews at About You?
Yeah, so the guidelines are more or less, they are on a Confluence page, so everyone can access it. Then we are currently quite actively working on an IT security training for developers to kind of make them even more aware of these guidelines. And the code reviews, we don't focus as much internally on the code reviews, but we have pen tests. Yeah, and our internal pen tests, for example, they are what we call white box. This is where our pen testers, they get as much access as there can be, so they can see everything, and they also analyze the code. We have also some code scanners, and we give feedback to developers that, hey, you are trying to deploy something insecure. And yeah, we're also collecting metrics on those scans and establishing goals internally to improve them. Like, for example, let's say we implement a scanner for a dangerous function in PHP, and we detect, that it's used across our company 100 times. Yeah, so we set ourselves a goal. Okay, let's get rid of it. And over time, we track this, because it's also important.
I understand. And what kinds of tools and technologies do you use to identify secure vulnerabilities?
We have a lot of tools. I cannot give you the whole list, because it's also a little bit of a company secret that I don't want to publish somewhere. But yeah, we use AWS to run our infrastructure, and they have a lot of products for security, and we use some of them. For example, for the protection against web-based attacks, we use Cloudflare. And for everything else, like let's say for vulnerability management and scanning, we use a mixture of open source and commercial and self-built tools for code scanning and vulnerability management, as I said. And yeah, just kind of identifying what is vulnerable and what's not.
I see. And what recommendation would you give companies starting to set up or expanding the activities to identify security vulnerabilities?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is not to over-engineer things, because sometimes if you listen to some vendors, they will tell you that, yeah, you need to cover 100% of cases because 1, 2, 3. But I think that it is quite important to first take care of the basics in security. So you establish good processes that are working to identify vulnerabilities. Maybe you will not identify everything, but you will, let's say, identify 80% of them by spending 20% of time implementing it. So when you cover these 80% everywhere, this is where you can start identifying, okay, you need to cover or to bridge that gap between 80 and 100%. And this is where you can start investing more. So yeah, take care of the basics and then start deciding which gaps to close further. Depending on your company, what is your threat landscape? So of course, also build a threat model that you're aware of and that your company is aware of, and focus on that.
I totally agree. What about the role of testing and reviewing security at various stages of development?
It is important, of course. So you maybe heard, maybe not, about the shift left approach. This is basically where you introduce security at early stages of development, because this is where it's the cheapest to fix a vulnerability. Let's take the worst case scenario, right? You design an application, so you draw up the architecture, then you start implementing it. It goes first from a developer's machine, it goes into the source code, then it's deployed to like a testing environment, then maybe staging, and then production. Then your application goes live. Then, I don't know, you start getting first users, or maybe you get, 100,000 users, and then you do a penetration test and you find out that you have a fundamental issue in your architecture, and changing that architecture would cost you so much time and so much money that you will definitely regret not asking someone to look at the architecture from a security perspective in the first place. So this is what we strive for, to detect issues as early as possible. And yeah, one of the things we do is we have a newsletter in the company, and people announce what they're working on. Every team announces that, and we monitor it. And when we see that something is changing or they are developing a new application, we approach them immediately and we say, hey, let's already schedule a penetration test. If you need any help with designing this thing early on, then just approach us. So we advertise ourselves.
Great. Can you give us an example of maybe a surprising outcome that would have been left behind if you would not have done this important job here?
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, a specific vulnerability, but we've had some severe vulnerabilities found on our website when we did a penetration test before the release. So, for example, I remember in the first versions of our scale offering, there were quite a bit of bugs or security issues that were found. For example, it was pretty difficult to get the identity and access management right. So we tested it over and over and over again and found so many issues and fixed them before the application went to the clients. So yeah, we could have been screwed, I would say, if we hadn't done this.
I see. Let's reflect the collaboration between teams. First of all, please introduce us the different roles and collaboration of developers, IT security engineers, and other team members at About You.
Yeah, so several typical roles that we have in the company. So there is a developer, of course, there is a DevOps engineer, there is what we call a platform engineer. Then we have IT security engineers, and all of these are scattered around multiple teams. So there are, of course, product owners, managers, like all the typical roles in an organization. I wouldn't say that we are very much different. And I think most of the work is done within the development team. So they write the code. They sometimes have a DevOps engineer who deploys it. Sometimes they get help from our centralized team of platform engineers, and all questions security are taken care of by us. And yeah, this collaboration is sometimes difficult because, as I said, most of the work is done within the same team. So they are used to working with each other, and they know the people in their team, and sometimes they don't know who we are in IT security and what we can do for them. And sometimes there are barriers, like, I don't know, to break the ice, they say, and this ice is often not broken in between the development team and security.
I see.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I went kind of sideways there.
Yeah, it's totally okay. Do you have any tips for an effective communication and knowledge transfer between teams?
Yeah, I do. Actually, and as I said, is to break this ice. So you can, of course, introduce a security engineer into every team, but this is not realistic with the current market. We really have to fight for good security engineers, and this is also expensive. Yeah, not every team requires a security engineer, but I would say, as I mentioned, there is this ice between the development teams and security, and the tip I can give is to establish some routines where people can melt this ice nice between each other, because when you have this kind of personal connection in between the employees, in between team members, it's much easier for them to approach each other with a question rather than, I don't know, writing a formal email or something, which nobody wants to do. And of course, the security team needs to present itself as friendly and helpful and not blaming. And in this way, after a while, you will get this reputation that you are there to help, and it's very easy to approach you, rather than if the development team approaches the security team, they will get, I don't know, either blamed for not developing the code securely, or they will start getting a ton of issues that they need to resolve ASAP, and so on.
Yeah, that's an absolutely very important point you mentioned.
Yeah,
absolutely. What are typical challenges and approaches to effective collaboration from your daily experience?
So the typical challenge, I would say, is a misalignment on priorities. So of course, the security people, we want to have all the issues fixed as soon as possible. But so our company doesn't make money on fixing security issues, and business needs to run. So we need to understand that development teams, they have other things to work on, and we have to keep it in mind when we approach them with the new vulnerability that they need to fix. So this is something we do quite a lot, but I think we've become quite good at it. So we don't have that misalignment that often, but sometimes we do. It depends on the team that we're working with. And something that improves this collaboration is, I would say, becoming or getting a personal connection with that development team. So this is where it becomes a little easier, and also being helpful. So not just, let's say, how it happens in a pen test. If you do an external pen test by a third party, they will give you a report, and that's it. You don't have any communication after that. But what we have, all the vulnerabilities, they are fed through our internal team. So we create vulnerabilities for the teams, we explain them to the teams, and then we help them fix it. So we are there all the way throughout the life cycle of a vulnerability. So we don't just create a vulnerability ticket and we're gone, fix it however you want. But we actually give advice how to fix something, and we can change priorities. We can discuss certain stuff when it comes to fixing it. So I would say that's what really helps.
Let's shed some light on future trends and developments in IT security.
Sure.
What's your personal outlook on new technologies and trends in IT security?
Yeah, so I see a lot of focus on using AI. It's been quite a boom in technology generally, and security is not an exception. Then I see also a lot of focus on centralizing your tooling and optimizing a security engineer's time, because security engineers are a scarce resource these days. It's very hard to get a good one or to get one at all. And I see that some companies, they're focusing on either let's say making the time of a security engineer used better, or for example, centralizing all the tooling, because in security you have so many things you have to take care of in the company, and it's also the case for About You, that it's so much better and easier for the engineers to just, you log into one platform and you look at all the issues there. Everything is there. Yeah. You don't have to change in between the tools. You don't need to maintain a set of 10, 15 different credentials. So I see this thing. It's called XDR. I don't remember what it stands for, to be honest. But yeah, and of course, AI. I think I've seen quite a bit of vendors trying to use AI in cybersecurity.
For sure. But how do you think the integration of AI in IT security will impact the overall effectiveness of threat detection and response, and what potential challenges might arise in implementing and managing such advanced technologies?
So I think, AI is not new, right? It's just when ChatGPT was released, it became a topic that everyone discusses. But AI is, of course, not new. We have been using, for example, an antivirus or an anti-malware solution for many years now that is based on a machine learning model. And I would say that there are some benefits and downsides, of course. So the benefits are that, let's say, when you're dealing with malware, why it became not enough to just, identify malware. You write some, how do you call it? I forgot. But yeah, you fingerprint that malware and you upload that signature to your antivirus, and then the next time this malware appears, it's blocked. Yeah, but malware developers, they are smarter than that. They are always changing their malware. So the behavior-based malware detection became a thing. So rather than looking at signatures of malware, we started looking at behaviors, and this is really good. At the same time, there are attacks on AI and on machine learning models that can be done. So you can either poison the model. So for example, you start sending it like malicious data that would change the machine learning model over time, and then it stops detecting something. So this is a challenge. Then, of course, the challenge is a lot of false positives. This creates alert fatigue. So while I think AI has a very big potential to reduce the alert fatigue within the cybersecurity engineering or threat detection, at the same time, it can really start flooding you with alerts, and then you're just drowning in alerts. So this is also a challenge, of course. And the false negative is also a really bad thing when a machine learning model or an AI model cannot detect something that is actually malicious. So that is also really bad.
And what are the challenges and opportunities for software development related to this?
In software development, so one challenge I see in AI, and something that I have seen a few examples of, is let's say you can ask ChatGPT, hey, I am writing this functionality. Can you give me the code to do it? And then ChatGPT it's not a system that can give you the correct answer. It will give you a statistically probable answer, or the most statistically probable answer. And for example, if we as society, we have been doing or making the same mistake for 20 years when developing software, ChatGPT will think that this is the correct solution and start giving you that piece of code that is vulnerable. And this is why it is quite a challenge. But at the same time, it is an opportunity to speed up your development. Yeah, so that's what I think.
So maybe to have in mind that things like AI are based on, at least today, are laying in the past and not in the future.
Yes, of course. So it's just statistics. So if statistically we teach AI that jumping from a roof is the good thing to do for your health, it will give you that answer. It will not say, oh yeah, you're gonna die, even though all humans know it. It's just a very basic example, but it is possible within machine learning and AI.
Of course. For sure, we can draw the conclusion that IT security is a must-have for any company, especially at any place where you expose technology components like APIs or data to the public, which is unavoidable today when using web interfaces or apps, for sure. What conclusion would you draw for today, Vladyslav?
Yeah, so maybe one thing that I want the listener to take out of this podcast is to create more interest around the security topic for everyone in your company and try to improve your security posture 1% a day. It is very difficult to notice that 1% improvement over time, but when you look 2-3 years ahead, you will be way better off than some others. So yeah, this small improvement every day is way better than staying on the same level. Just pretty much like with anything, but with security, it is as important as anywhere else.
Of course. That's for sure. Last but not least, our personal interview insights to you as our podcast guest. Yeah. Asking you 3 questions. First, what unique experiences or skills do you possess that might surprise our audience and differ from typical expectation that they might have of you?
So I think that I'm quite good at presenting complex topics in an easy and sometimes funny way. I think over my years at About You, I have created a lot of interest around the security topic and awareness around the security topic within the company. And I did it with memes and jokes in the presentations. So I would push myself into company presentations where everyone's listening. And I would ask for, okay, give me 10 minutes. I just need 10 minutes of of the time, and I will present something security related. It's important and it will be funny. And this is what I did many times. And we continue doing this. And I think people really get interested and aware that security is important and it exists.
That's a great suggestion. Second question. Reflecting on your journey, what is a surprising lesson you've learned that has a profound impact on your personal or professional life?
It was not maybe surprising, but what I could come up with is that it is very important to surround yourself with people who will support you and inspire you to do more. Yeah, to be better or to get better every day. There will be, of course, days when you feel down, and I think it happens to everyone. But sometimes it's quite difficult to get out of this. And when you have a team of like very motivated people, and you see them, you see this motivation, you see this commitment that they have, and it really helps you get that motivation back in yourself as well.
Great. I think this is the same intention of this podcast.
Nice.
So, third question. Who should we invite as a future guest to our podcast?
Yeah, I can recommend two people. One would be Santiago Aragon. He's the CTO at Xlink. I don't actually know how to pronounce that company name. But yeah, we studied with him together during the master's degree in the Netherlands, and I think he's one of the technology leaders to look up to in the next few years. And also another person I would recommend is Pham Duy Phuc, also my former university mate, and he has a PhD in cybersecurity, and he is one of the most talented malware researchers that I know. So also, if you get these people on your podcast, I think your listeners would get a lot of interesting insights from them.
Great, I'll try. So special thanks to our guest Vladyslav Cherednychenko. Vladyslav, do you have a blog or recommendation for a special event where we find additional tips?
Yes, sure. So apart from being on the podcast today, I'm also organizing a developer conference, one of the biggest developer conferences in Germany. It's called Code Talks, and it's happening in Hamburg on 14th and 15th of September. So we're going to have a lot of different tracks in development and technology, and cybersecurity is one of the tracks. We have we have around 10 speakers on security in 2 days. So you can go and almost for 2 days listen to security stuff. We have a security workshop in there. So if you want, then either reach out to me if you're interested in details, or just search for code.talks and you will find this conference.
Yeah, cool. I think Code Talks is Germany's largest reunion of the development scene, and definitely an excellent chance to broaden our horizon and to become part of the community. So thank you very much for sharing your valuable knowledge and insights with us, Vladyslav, and great to have you aboard our Rock the Prototype podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure and very exciting.
Thank you. As always, you can find all the information in the show notes and on our website at rocktheprototype.com. In our next podcast episode, we'll focus web app development with Next again. Don't miss it. Whether you're a more experienced developer or just diving into the world of programming, Rock the Prototype is a place for you. So subscribe to our podcast now and let's rock software development and prototyping together. If you have any questions or need more information, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks for listening and see you on board the next episode of our Rock the Prototype podcast. Please support us and leave your podcast review now. Thank you for listening. Yours, Sascha.